Namaste Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Tirye Nashtu Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. So today we are starting a new chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 18, Lord Balram slays the demon Pralamba. But before that, yesterday we talked about Kalia. So who was in his last life before he became Kalia? During the time of Swayambhuva Manu, the first Manu, a descendant of Bhrigu Muni named Vedashira Muni, was performing austerities in the Vindhya hills. One day a sage named Ashvashira Muni came as an unexpected guest to Vedashira's ashram and wanted to perform austerities there. See, even Munis, they just want to come and perform austerities. They don't want to just exploit the conveniences there. But this somehow displeased the Vedashira Muni, who greeted the unwanted guest with red and angry eyes and spoke unpleasant words to him. Vedashira told the Brahman, whose wealth was in austerity, not to perform austerities in his ashram, but to find some other place to practice. See, material world, anything can happen, even in ashram. Those who engage in performance of austerities are prone to anger, and thus the sage Ashvashira also became angry, and his eyes were red hot. Eyes red hot means really, really angry. Both were angry at each other. Ashvashira Muni replied to the sage Vedashira by saying that his ashram was not really his at all, but belonged to Mahavishnu, and that many sages in the past had also lived and performed austerities there. Then he cursed him by saying, "You're angry for no reason, and you hiss as if you're a snake. Therefore, become a snake who will be terrified of Garuda." This was too much for Vedashira Muni to hear. So he counter-cursed the sage, saying that he was a fool who wanted to take great revenge for his slight offense, and who therefore had the qualities of a crow, which he would immediately become. So one Muni became crow, one Muni became a snake. That was their curses to each other. Lord Vishnu, who was kind to all his devotees, suddenly appeared on the scene to console the two sages, who were very unhappy due to their cursing each other. So finally they all, because of tapasya, they come to the mode of goodness, but for momentarily they fell down. The Lord said that the two sages were equally devoted to him, and they were just like the two arms of his transcendental body. The Lord admitted that he had the power to make his own words false, but never the words of such sages as they, for this is his vow. Therefore, the Lord adjusted the situation by promising Vedashira that he would place his lotus feet on his head. And thus, because of this, he would never have to fear Garuda. And to Ashvashira, the Lord, while telling him not to lament, promised him that although a crow, he will still have the highest transcendental knowledge and yogic siddhis. After thus speaking to the sages, he departed. The sage Ashvashira became the cow Bhushundi on Mount Nila, who was very powerful and devoted to Lord Ram, and who was like a shining lamp of scriptural understanding. He recited Ramayana to Garudji. And the other sage, Ashvashira, he became Kalika. So even the sages, they are performing austerities, but they still got so angry at each other and they cursed each other. And look at the result of that curse. It is so terrible. So this anger can really take us down. So we got to be very careful when we speak to each other. What do we say? How do we say it? And what about this Kalia? Now, Kalia, what does it represent? What anartha it represents in our heart? Kalia represents brutal cruelty, maliciousness, pride, envy, and a snake-like crookedness. He particularly tries to pour his poison into the hearts of innocent Vaishnavas, which Krishna cannot tolerate. So then the Lord kills him. So many anarthas in our heart that just by studying this, these anarthas go away by mercy of Krishna. And Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, he had written a wonderful article in Harmonist, but it's a long article, so I'll just read part of it. Kalia is a type of cunning and malice. He is the embodiment of unrelenting cruelty. There is no place for Kalia in the happy realm of Braja. Deceit and cruelty are as poisonous to the artless, loving nature of the denizens of Braja. It is quite conceivable for the confidential friends of Krishna not to entertain any suspicion regarding the malicious intent of cruel and deceitful persons, whose purpose is to poison them against Krishna. They may even unwittingly fall into the counsel of such evil persons, but Krishna is sure to rescue his own from the wiles of the enemies. Of course, Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj's English was very good English. He used to write, and very tough English actually. Even the British people had hard time understanding his English. The banishment of Kalia from the lake of Yamuna has a most important spiritual significance. Those who have a purpose to create trouble against the pure devotees of Krishna by infecting the devotees with their own malicious disposition meet with a certain degree of initial success in their nefarious undertaking. This emboldens them. This gives them more strength to make a direct attack upon Krishna himself when he appears on the scene of their depraved activities in order to restore the living faith of his own bona fide associates. So then Krishna kicks them out actually. Those who are not exceedingly clever can never be servants of Shri Krishna, but the service of Krishna is also never available to those whose cunning is employed by depriving Krishna of the fullness of his enjoyment. So that's why Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj used to say, Saralta hi Vaishnavata. So one has to be very, very simple at heart to become a devotee. The mercy shown to Kalia is so obviously and disproportionately great in its magnitude in face of the extreme gravity of his offense that no rationalistic explanation can do justice to its full beneficent significance. So he got so much of mercy, right? Krishna putting his lotus feet on his head and then not killing him, but just banishing him. Just go to the sea, go to the ocean. Don't come here. Don't live here. And extinguishing the first forest fire that also Krishna did after killing Kalia. The first forest fire represents hatred and arguments between Vaishnavas or different religions and disrespecting each other's deities. It can also represent any type of clash or conflict. So we all have many clashes, many conflicts among each other, among all of us or with different people. So all these clashes, even the inclination to clash with one another, that also goes away. We read this pastime again and again. Srila Sanatana Goswami makes a point that some people say that the fire was a friend of Kalia's, who assumed this form, and others say that he was a demon who was a follower of Kamsa. So whatever the reason may be, but nevertheless, it represents the conflicts, hatred and arguments between Vaishnavas, so different religions, and disrespecting each other's deities, especially when Shaivites hate Krishna and Vaishnavas don't want to worship Lord Shiva, or even among Vaishnavas also. So much of clash and conflict. So if we just read this story of Krishna extinguishing the first forest fire, he will do it again later on, and that represents something else. So if you just read that with faith, with conviction, with dedication, then this all these anarthas, they slowly, they go away. So anyway, so coming back to our chapter 18, Lord Balram slays the demon Pralambasura. Shri Shukuvacha Atha Krishna Parivritu Gyati Bhir Muditatma Bhi Anugiyamano Nyavishad Vrajam Gokul Manditam. Shukdev Goswami said, surrounded by his blissful companions, who constantly chanted his glory, Shri Krishna then entered the village of Vraj, which was decorated with herds of cows. Vraje vikridat torevam gopal lachadma mayaya grishmo namar turabhavan nati preyan charirinam. While Krishna and Balram were thus enjoying life in Vrindavan in the guise of ordinary cowherd boys, the summer season gradually appeared. This season is not very pleasing to embodied souls. In chapter 18 of Krishna Bhakt, Prabhupada comments as follows. The summer season in India is not very much welcomed because of the excessive heat. But in Vrindavan, everyone was pleased because summer there appeared just like spring. So it wasn't very hot in Vrindavan, but nowadays it gets very, very hot. Sacha Vrindavan Gunera Vasantiv Lakshita Yatraste Bhagwan Sakshad Ramena Sahakeshava. Nevertheless, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was personally staying in Vrindavan along with Balram, summer manifested the qualities of spring. Such are the features of the land of Vrindavan. Yatra nirjhar nirharada nirvat tasvan jillikam shashwatachi kararajisha drum mandala manditam. In Vrindavan, the loud sound of waterfalls covered the cricket's noise, and clusters of trees constantly moistened by spray from those waterfalls beautified the entire area. This and following three verses describe how Vrindavan manifested the features of spring, even during the summer seasons. So there were waterfalls. When we go to Vrindavan now, we don't see waterfall. But Govardhan, actually, Govardhan, it is described, it has everything. Waterfalls, lakes, gardens, caves, wonderful trees, so much it has. We don't see it because our eyes are not properly situated. Sarit Sara Prasravanor Miyavu Nivayuna Karahara Kanjot Palarenu Harina Navidyate Yatravano Davo Nida Ghavan Aryak Bhavo Atishadvale. The wind wafting over the waves of the lakes and flowing rivers carried away the pollen of many varieties of lotuses and water lilies, and then cooled the entire Vrindavan area. Thus, the residents there did not suffer from the heat generated by the blazing summer sun and seasonal forest fires. Indeed, Vrindavan was abundant with fresh green grass. So if there are lakes and rivers, how can there be heat? Aghad yovani dini tator mibhir dravat purishya pulina samantata nayatra chandan shukara visholbana bhuvo rasam shad valitam chagrinate. With their flowing waves, the deep rivers drenched their banks, making them damp and muddy. Thus, the rays of the sun, which were as fierce as poison, could not evaporate the earth's sap or parch its green grass. Vanam kusumitam shrimannadachitram mrigadvijam gayan mayur brahmaram kujat kokila sarasam. Flowers beautifully decorated the forest of Vrindavan, and many varieties of animals and birds filled it with sound. The peacocks and bees sang, and the cuckoos and the cranes cooed. Kridishya manas tat varashno bhagwan bal samyutaha venum viranayan gopar godhana samrito abhishak. Intending to engage in pastimes, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accompanied by Lord Balram and surrounded by the cowherd boys and the cows, entered the forest of Vrindavan as he played his flute. Praval barhastak bakas tragna tu krit bhushana Rama Krishna dayo gopaha nanritur yuyur dhur jaguhu. Decorating themselves with the newly grown leaves along with peacock feathers, garlands, clusters of flower birds, and colored minerals. Balram, Krishna, and their cowherd friends danced, wrestled, and sang. See, full masti goes on over there. Krishnasya nirtitah kechit, jagu kechid vadayam, venu panitala shringa, prashashansur thapare. As Krishna danced, some of the boys accompanied him by singing, and others by playing flute, hand cymbals, and buffalo horns, while still others praised his dancing. Wanting to encourage Krishna, some of the cowherd boys openly praised his dancing. Gopajati pratichanna deva gopala rupino idire Krishna ramocha natayev natam nripa. O king, demigods disguised themselves as members of the cowherd community. Just as dramatic dancers praised another dancer, worshipped Krishna and Balaram, who were also appearing as cowherd boys. So demigods also joined them. Brahmanayar langhana kshepa asfotan vikarshana chikridi turni yuddhena kakapakshadharo kochit. Krishna and Balram played with their cowherd boyfriends by whirling about, leaping, hurling, slapping, and fighting. Sometimes Krishna and Balram would pull the hair on the boys' heads. The Acharyas have explained this verse as follows. The word Brahmana indicates that the boys, pretending they were machines, would sometimes whirl about until they become dizzy. They would also sometimes jump about, langhana. The word shepa indicates that sometimes they would hurl objects like balls or stones, and that sometimes they would grab each other by the arms and throw one another about. Asfotan means that sometimes they would slap one another's shoulders or backs, and Vikarshana indicates they would drag one another about in the midst of their play. By the words niyudhena, arm wrestling, and other types of friendly fighting are indicated. And the word Kaka Pakshadharo means that Krishna and Balaram would sometimes grab the hair on the boys' heads in a playful manner. See, even boys today, young little boys, they do all this stuff. Kachin Nrityatsu Chaneshu Gayako Vadako Swayam Shashanstur Maharaja Sadhu Sadviti Vadino. While the other boys were dancing, Krishna and Balram would sometimes accompany them with song and instrumental music, and sometimes the two lords would praise the boys, saying, "Very good, very good." Kvachit bilva, kvachit kumbha, kvachamal kamushtibhi asprishya netra bandhadya, kvachin mrighage haya. Sometimes the cowherd boys would play with bilva or kumbha fruits, and sometimes with handfuls of amalaka fruits. At other times, they would play the games of trying to touch one another or of trying to identify somebody while one is blindfolded. And sometimes they would imitate animals and birds. Srila Sanatan Goswami explains that the word adya by such other sports indicates that games as chasing one another and building bridges, another pastime would occur at noon while Lord Krishna was taking rest. Nearby, the young cowherd girls would be passing by singing, and Krishna's boyfriends would pretend to inquire from them about the price of milk. Then the boys would steal yogurt and other items from them and run away. Krishna, Balram, and their friends would also play games in which they would cross the river in boats. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur further explains that the boys would play with fruits by throwing a few in the air and then throwing others to try to hit them. The word Netra Bandha indicates a game in which one boy would approach a blindfolded boy from behind and place his palms over the blindfolded boy's eyes. Then simply by the feel of his palms, the blindfolded boy would have to guess who the other boy was. In all such games, the boys put up stakes for the winner, and such as flutes or walking sticks. Sometimes the boys would imitate the various fighting methods of the forest animals, and at other times they would chirp like birds. So, I guess, I think when we were young, we had played all these, obviously not inquiring the price of milk from girls and stealing yogurts. Other than that, I think we have played all these games. But these days, kids, they don't get to play all this. They just play on computer or mobile, whatever they want to play. क्वचित् दर्दुरुप लावेर विविधैर उपहासकैः कदाचित् स्यन्दोलिकया करहिचिन् नृपचेष्टया. They would sometimes jump around like frogs, sometimes play various jokes, sometimes ride in swings and imitate monarchs. And sometimes imitate monarchs. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the word Niripacheshtaya as follows. In Vrindavan, there was a particular place on the river bank where people who wanted to cross the Yamuna would pay a small tax. At times, the cowherd boys would assemble in this area and prevent the young girls of Vrindavan from crossing the river, insisting that they had to pay a customs duty first. Such activities were full of joking and laughter. Evam to loka siddhabhi krida bhishcherturvane nadya droni kunjeshu kananeshu sarasucha. In this way, Krishna and Balram played all sorts of well-known games as they wandered among the rivers, hills, valleys, bushes, trees, and lakes of Vrindavan. See, here it's mentioned lakes of Vrindavan. So there were many, many lakes over there. Pashuscharya tor gopas tadvane Rama Krishnayo goparupi pralambo gad asur astaj jihirshaya. While Ram, Krishna, and the cowherd friends were thus tending the cows in that Vrindavan forest, the demon Pralamba entered their midst. He had assumed the form of a cowherd boy with the intention of kidnapping Krishna and Balaram. Having described how Krishna and Balaram acted just like ordinary boys, Shukadeva Goswami will now reveal one of the Lord's transcendental pastimes that is beyond the range of human activity. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the demon Pralamba disguised himself as a particular cowherd boy who on that day had remained at home with duties to perform. So he disguised himself as a cowherd boy who didn't come to join the party that day. Tam vidwan api dasharho bhagwan sarva darshana anvamoda tatsakyam vadam tasya vichintayan. Since the Supreme Lord Krishna, who had appeared in the Dashara dynasty, sees everything, he understood who the demon was. Still, the Lord pretended to accept the demon as a friend, while at the same time seriously considering how to kill him. Tatropahuya Gopalan Krishna Praha Viharavit He Gopa Viharishyamam Dvandvi Bhuya Yathayatham. Krishna, who knows all sports and games, then called together the cowherd boys and spoke as follows. Hey, cowherd boys, let's play now. We'll divide ourselves into two even teams. The word yatha yatham means that Krishna naturally wanted the two teams to be evenly matched. so that there would be a good game. In addition to the pleasure of sporting, the purpose of the game was to kill the demon Pralamba. Tatra chakru parivrido gopa rama janardano Krishna sangitane tina kechid asana ramasya chapare. The cowherd boys chose Krishna and Balram as the leaders of two parties. Some of the boys were on Krishna's side and the others joined Balaram. Acherur vividha krida vahaya vahakalakshana yatra rohanti jetaro vahanti chaparadita. The boys played various games involving carriers and passengers. In these games, the winners would climb up on the backs of the losers who would have to carry them. Srila Sanatana Goswami quotes the following relevant verse from the Vishnu Purana. They then played the childhood game known as Harina Kridanam, in which each boy paired off with an opponent. All the boys simultaneously attacked their respective rivals. Vahanto vahaya manascha charyantash godhanam bhandirakam namavatam jagmu Krishna purogamaha. So this happened in Bhandiravan. Thus carrying and being carried by one another and at the same time tending the cows, the boys followed Krishna to a banyan tree known as Bhandiraka. Srila Sanatana Goswami quotes the following verses from Sri Harivansha, which describes the banyan tree. They saw that best of all trees which had many long branches, with its dense covering of leaves, it resembled a cloud sitting on the earth. Indeed, its form was so large that it appeared like a mountain covering half the sky. Many birds with charming blue wings frequented that great tree, whose dense fruits and leaves made it seem like a cloud, accompanied by a rainbow like a house decorated with creepers and flowers. It spread its broad roots downwards and carried upon itself the sanctified clouds. That banyan tree was like the lordly master of all other trees in that vicinity, as it performed the all-auspicious functions of warding off the rain and the heat of the sun. Such was the appearance of that near-growth tree known as Bhandir, which seemed just like the peak of a great mountain. So, all the time is over, but let's see how many more verses are there. Okay, let's see how much we can cover. Ram Sanghatino Yarhi Sridama Vrishabhadaya Kridayam Jayani Stan Uhu Krishna Dayo Nripam. My dear King Parikshit, when Sridham, Rishabh and other members of Lord Balram's party were victorious in these games, Krishna and his followers had to carry them. Uvaha Krishna Bhagavan Shridamanam Parajita Vrishabham Bhadra Senastu Pralamba Rohini Sutam. Defeated, the Supreme Lord Krishna carried Sridham, Bhadrasen carried Rishabh, and Pralamba carried Balram, the son of Rohini. One may ask how Bhagwan, the Supreme Lord, can be defeated by his boyfriends. The answer is that in his original form, God has a most playful nature and occasionally enjoys submitting to the strength or desire of his loving friends. A father may sometimes playfully fall down on the ground when struck by his beloved little child. These acts of love give pleasure to all parties. The Sridham agreed to ride on Lord Krishna's shoulders to please his beloved friend who happened to be Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Avishayam manyamana Krishnam Danava Pungava Vahandrutattaram Pragad Avarohanat Haranatah Param. Considering Lord Krishna invincible, that foremost demon Pralamba quickly carried Balram far beyond the spot where he was supposed to put his passenger down. So Pralambasur, he came in the party and he joined the team of Krishna because his thought was Krishna is too powerful to kill, so let me kill Balram first. So he carried Balram, he just kept on going. He carried him far beyond the spot. To a certain distance, they were supposed to carry the winner, but Pralambasura kept going. So Pralamba wanted to carry Balram out of Lord Krishna's sight so that he could truly attack him. I'll just go to the translation and purpose. As a great demon carried Balram, the Lord became as heavy as massive Mount Sumeru, and Pralamba had to slow down. He then resumed his actual form, an effulgent body that was covered with golden ornaments and that resembled a cloud flashing with lightning and carrying the moon. So moon means Balramji because he is white in color. Here the demon Pralamba is compared to a cloud, his golden ornaments to lightning within that cloud, and that Lord Balram to moon shining through it. Great demons can assume various forms by exerting the mystic power, but when the Lord's spiritual potency curtails that power, they can no longer maintain an artificial form and must again manifest their actual demoniac body. Lord Balram suddenly became as heavy as a great mountain, and although the demon tried to carry him high on his shoulders, he could not go on. When Lord Balram, who carries a plow weapon, saw the gigantic body of the demon as he moved swiftly in the sky, with his blazing eyes, fiery hair, terrible teeth, reaching towards his scowling brows and an amazing effulgence generated by his armlets, crown, and earrings, the Lord seemed to be a little frightened. He was playing, but he looked like, a little frightened. Remembering the actual situation, the fearless Balram understood that the demon was trying to kidnap him and take him away from his companions. The Lord then became furious and struck the demon's head with his hard fist, just as Indra, the king of the demigods, strikes a mountain with his thunderbolt weapon. So he was flying high in the sky. Pralambasura means he was very tall, very high. And he just took Balramji way up in the sky. And Balramji just kicked him with his fist, hit him with his fist. Thus, smashed by Balram's fist, Pralamba's head immediately cracked open. The demon vomited blood from his mouth and lost all consciousness. And then with a great noise, he fell lifeless on the ground, like a mountain devastated by Indra. The cowherd boys were most astonished to see how the powerful Balram had killed the demon Pralamba, and they exclaimed, "Excellent, excellent." This is what the boys want, some action. They offered Balram profuse benedictions and then glorified him, who deserves all glorification. Their minds overwhelmed with ecstatic love, they embraced him as if he had come back from the dead. The sinful Pralamba, having been killed, the demigods felt extremely happy, and they showered flower garlands upon Lord Balram and praised the excellence of his deed. So thus ends the purports of 10th canto, 18th chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Balram slays the demon Pralambasura. So we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, out of 24 of Vishnu, Chaitanya was not listed there.
Lost you. Could not hear. Your connection is not good.
No, Prabhuji.
So you can write on the group.
So the 24 avatars of Vishnuji, Lord Chaitanya was not listed there as one of them.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not avatar. He's avatari. He's Krishna himself.
Okay. He's avatari.
Yeah, he is Krishna himself who came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's not avatar.
Okay. Actually, Prabhuji, somebody asked me this question yesterday. So I couldn't clarify it by saying avatari rather than he's not an avatar like you explained this. So
Yeah.
now I got the answer. So if somebody asks me, I'll tell them.
That's how we all learned. We all asked questions when we didn't know.
Yes. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Thank you all very
Thank you,
much. You
Prabhuji.
all have
Thank
a
you.
safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Jai
Hare
Shri
Krishna,
Prabhupada.
Prabhuji.
Hare
Jai
Krishna,
Shri
Jai Shri
Prabhupada. Thank you,
Prabhupada.
Prabhuji.